No, this is not a Hollywood blockbuster. The planes crashing into these towers are real. And these buildings crashed to the ground, including one that wasn't hit by anything at all. The American population was terrorized, hypnotized, and traumatized by repetitive showings of the devastation, with the media repeating over and over that it was a terrorist attack.
Race don't matter, your faith don't matter, the enemy is government tyranny, all that other shit don't matter.
This is very, very interesting on this neuroscientist who wants to upload humanity to a computer. Now, what's even more interesting is RandalKoene is recruiting top neuroscientists to help him make humans live forever. It's by Adam Piortis, who wrote this. And the other crazy part, it's from 2014. Okay? May 16th. And I give credit to Bro Sanchez. Shout out, much love and respect to that brother. 7 years almost it's been since I've been learning. I consider him my teacher because he has taught me so much. Even though I had so many questions and I already knew a lot, he added to, just completely opened my mind and freed me from a lot of the BS and opened my mind and set me down the right track like a real teacher or elder supposed to do, man. They're supposed to send you down the right track. But let's get into this article. Let's get into these little parts of the brain here. You got your frontal lobe, which is for the plan and reasons. You got your motor strip, which controls the movements of your body. You got your partial lobe, which is the receivers and processes sensation. Then you got your thalamus, which is relays data to the brain parts. Then you got your Broca's area, which transforms thoughts into words. Then you got your hypothalamus, which controls the hormone release. Then you got your occipital, or is it occipital lobe, which processes images. Then you got your temporal lobe. It's hard to see these little words. Temporal lobe processes sound and stores memories. Then you got your medulla, which almost looks like that's the part that connects to Jacob's ladder. Your medulla. The medulla controls the vital functions such as pulse. And you got your cerebellum, controls balance and coordinates fine motor movement. And then they say the same thing here, but it's just a lot bigger. I should have went to this one, as a matter of fact, but we're going to get into the human brain. I just need a 1 second break to get me some coffee. Top of the AM for everyone over here. It is Saturday morning, 7:19 a.m. Eastern Time. The date is the 13th of November. Good old 13. That is a very, very, how could I put it, esoteric number? Nah, that's a very important number, 13. So it says, human brain. Everything felt possible at Transhuman Vision 2014. A conference in February billed as a forum for visionaries to describe our fast approaching, brilliant, and bizarre future. I disagree. It ain't going to be a bizarre. It is going to be a bizarre future, but Mother Earth is screaming for us to not go down this road. People reverse engineered Mother Earth and the human body to use it for evil, in my opinion. Allegedly. Inside an old waterfront military depot in San Francisco, Fort Mason, young entrepreneurs hawked experimental smart drugs and coffee made with a special kind of butter they said provided cognitive enhancements. A woman offered online therapy sessions. A middle-aged conventionaire wore an electrode array that displayed his brain waves on a monitor as multicolor patterns. On stage, a speaker with a shaved head and a thick black beard held forth on DIY sensory augmentation, a group called Science for the Masses. He said was developed a pill that would soon allow humans to perceive the near-infrared spectrum. He personally had implanted tiny magnets into his outer ears so that he could listen to music converted into vibrations by a magnetic coil attached to his phone. None of this seemed particularly ambitious, however, compared with the claim soon to follow. In the back of the audience, carefully reviewing his notes, sat RandalKoene, a best-spectacled neuroscientist wearing black cargo pants, a black t-shirt showing a brain on the laptop screen, and a pair of black shiny boots. Isn't that great that they let you know he's in all black? Koene had come to explain to the assembled crowd how to live forever. As a species, we really only inhabit a small sliver of time and space. Koene said when he took the stage, we want a species that can be effective and influential and creative in a much larger sphere. More or less slaves that are immortal. Koene's solution was straightforward. Allegedly, they want it for slavery, but I don't know. I just think they want people to live forever. Who knows? Koene's solution was straightforward. He planned to upload his brain to a computer by mapping the brain, reducing its activity to computations, and reproducing those computations in code. Koene argued humans could live indefinitely, emulated by silicone. When I say emulation, you should think of it, for example, in the same sense as emulating a Macintosh on a PC, he said. It's kind of like platform-independent code. The audience sat silent, possibly awed, possibly confused as Koene led them through a complex tour of recent advances in neuroscience supplemented with charts and graphs. Koene has always had a complicated relationship with transhumanists, who likewise believe in elevating humanity to another plane. A Dutch-born neuroscientist and neuroengineer, he has spent decades collecting credentials necessary to bring his fringe ideas in line with mainstream science. Now that science is coming to him, researchers around the globe have made deciphering the brain a central objective. In 2013, both the US and the EU announced initiations that promise to accelerate brain science in much the same way that the Human Genome Project advanced genomics. The minutiae may have been lost on the crowd, but as Koene departed the stage, the significance of what they just witnessed was not. The knowledge necessary to achieve what Koene calls substrate-independent minds seems tantalizingly within reach. The concept of brain emulation has a long, colorful history in science fiction, but it also deeply rooted into computer science. An entire subfield known as neural networking is based on the physical architecture and biological rules that underpin neuroscience. Roughly 85 billion individual neurons make up the human brain, each one connected to as many as 10,000 other via branches called axons and dendrites. Every time a neuron fires, an electrochemical signal jumps from the axon of one neuron to the dendrite of another across a synapse between them. It's the sum of those signals that encode information and enable the brain to process input, form associations, and execute commands. Many neuroscientists believe the essence of who we are, our memories, emotions, personalities, predilections, even our consciousness lies in those patterns and should stay like that. I don't know why people always want to play the creator that created this realm. It should stay the way it is, but hey, that's my opinion. In the 1940s, neurophysiologist Warren McCulloch and mathematician Walter Armpits suggested a simple way to describe brain activity using math, regardless of everything happening around it. They noted a neuron can be in only one of two possible states, active or at rest. Early computer scientists quickly grasped that if they wanted to program a brain-like machine, they could use the basic logic system, their prototypes, the binary electric switches symbolized by ones and zeros to represent the on and off state of an individual neurons. Here's your guy Cohen. So neuroscientist RandalKoene. A few years later, Canadian psychologist Donald Hebb suggested that memories are nothing more than associations encoded in a network in the brain. Those associations are formed by neurons firing simultaneously or in sequence. For example, if a person sees a face that hears a name at the same time, neurons in both the visible and auditory areas of the brain will fire, causing them to connect. The next time that person sees the face, the neurons encoding the name will also fire, prompting the person to recollect it. So basically they're saying I don't know if I agree with that, man. I mean, they're the scientists, but they make it seem like we're just these I don't know. I don't know how to put it into words. Let's just move on. I'll think about it as I'm reading. Using these insights, computer engineers have created artificial neural networks capable of forming associations or learning. Programmers instruct the networks to remember which pieces of data have been linked in the past, and then to predict the likelihood that those two pieces will be linked in the future. Today, such software can perform a variety of complex pattern recognition tasks, such as detecting credit card purchases that diverge dramatically from a customer's past behavior, indicating possible fraud. Of course, any neuroscientist will tell you that artificial neural networks don't begin and incorporate the true complexity of the human brain. Researchers have yet to characterize the many ways neurons interact and have yet to grasp how different chemical pathways affect the likelihood that they will fire. There may be rules they don't yet know exist. So, what is this, trial and error? But such networks remain perhaps the strongest illustration of an assumption crucial to the hopes and dreams of RandalKoene, that our identity is nothing more than the behavior of individual neurons and the relationship between them, and that most of the activities of the brain, if technology were capable of recording and analyzing them, can theoretically be reduced to computations. On a warm afternoon in late January, I follow Koene up the stairs of the second floor walk up he shares with his girlfriend on the edge of San Francisco's Portero Hill. He leads me through a small living room crammed full of synthesizers and Legos and into a bedroom, where a standing desk represents his home office. It holds oversized computer screens and laptops arrayed like the electronics of a Starship command center. It's a modest setting, but Koene is only in the third decade of his quest, a mere blink of an eye when you consider that his goal is immortality. Koene, the son of a particle physicist, first discovered mind uploading at age 13 when he read the 1956 Arthur C. Clarke classic The City and the Stars. Clarke's book describes a city 1 billion years in the future. Its residents live multiple lives and spend the time between them stored in the memory banks of a central computer capable of generating new bodies. Now, that central computer is built right now today. And Brother Sanchez talks about it all the time, and I'm going to put a picture of it because I forgot the name of it, but I'll find it and I'll post it. I began to think about our limits, Koene says. Ultimately, it is our biology, our brain, that is mortal. But Clarke talks about a future in which people can be constructed and deconstructed, in which people are information, and they want to get to our soul. You see, he said, but Clarke talks about the future in which people, no, he says, ultimately it is our biology, our brain that is mortal. So what's not immortal? Our soul. It was a vision, Koene decided, worth devoting his life to pursuing. He began by studying physics in college, believing the root to his goal lay in finding ways to reconstruct patterns of individual atoms. By the time he graduated, however, he concluded that all he really needed was a digital brain, so he enrolled in a master's program at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, where he focused on neural networks and artificial intelligence. It was while at Delft in 1994 that Koene made an important discovery, a community of people who shared his ambition. I feel the same way when I found Bro Sanchez's channel and all these other channels that watch Bro Sanchez. It's like a big community of free thinkers. I love it. But anyway, let's move on. Exploring the new medium of the internet, he stumbled upon the Mind Uploading homepage, owned by Joe Strout, an Ohio-born computer buff, aspiring neuroscientist, and self-described immortalist. Strout facilitated a discussion group that Koene quickly joined, and its members began to debate whether extracting information from the brain was technologically feasible, and if it was, what they should call it: downloading, uploading, or mind transfer. They eventually settled on whole brain emulation, and then they outlined career goals that would help them advance their cause. So let me know. Well, you can't let me know so far what you think, but this is going to be a pretty long one. Koene chose to pursue a PhD in computational neuroscience at McGill University and later landed at Boston University Neurophysiology Lab, where he attempted to replicate mouse brain activity on a computer. Strout pursued an advanced degree in neuroscience, then moved to the lab of a computational neurobiologist at the Salk Institute. We were all trying to push research problems in whatever way we could, Strout says. The trouble was that the problem was that for the elder neuroscience researchers, this wasn't a topic. They could discuss publicity. They would talk about it over a beer, but it was too fringe for people who were trying to get grants for research. By mapping the brain, humans could live indefinitely. By then, many of the other group members had earned their credentials, and in 2007, computational neuroscientist Anders Sandberg, who studies the bioethics of human enhancement at Oxford University, summoned interested experts to Oxford's Future of Humanity Institute for a 2-day workshop. Participants laid out a roadmap of capabilities humans would need to develop in order to successfully emulate a brain. Mapping the structure, learning how that structure matches function, and developing the software and hardware to run it. See, I always knew they reverse engineered the human brain in order to build a computer brain. Not long afterward, Koene left Boston University to become the director of neuroengineering at the Fetronic Tecnalia Institute in Spain, one of the largest private research organizations in Europe. I didn't like the job once I figured out they weren't into taking any risks and didn't really care about futuristic things related to whole brain emulation. Koene says, so in 2010 he moved to Silicon Valley to take a job as head of analyst at Halcyon Molecular, a nanotechnology company that had raised more than $20 million from PayPal co-founders Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, among others, though Halcyon's goal was to develop low-cost DNA sequencing tools. Its leaders assured Koene he would have time to work on brain emulation, a goal they supported. By the time Halcyon abruptly went out of business in 2012, Koene had created carboncopies.org, which serves as a hub for mind uploading advocates. He had also made a lot of contacts. Within months, he secured financial backing from Dmitry Itkov, a Russian .com module, who hoped to upload himself to a sophisticated artificial carrier, and considered whole brain emulation an essential step. We need to provide a foundation so the new field of brain emulation is taken seriously. Koene tells me from his bedroom command center. He opens a color-coded chart on one of the screens. It consists of overlapping circles filled with names and affiliations, divided into wedges representing the roadmap's objectives. Koene points to the outermost circle. These are the people who just have compatible R&D goals, he says. Then he indicates the smaller inner circle, and these are the people who are on board. It's all of those individuals, mainstream neuroscientists, who will advance whole brain emulation, Koene says, not transhumanists, who he observes lack rigor, and they'll do so even if philosophically their goals are quite different. So he's saying transhumanists and brain emulation are completely different. Or so they say. There's something different about it, and these transhumanists won't do what he's gonna do, I guess. I wonder what this is. The brain with colors. Those look like a bunch of sperms. Anyway. The human brain, yep, that is the brain. The human brain is made up of billions of nerve cells connected by trillions of synapses. Synapses. Together they encode information such as personality and memory. Scientists at Harvard Center for Brain Science have developed a technique called Brainbow to map this circuitry in exquisite detail. The cerebral cortex at the top of the image stores memory and controls conscious activity, such as motor skills and vision. By making a 3D database of high-resolution images, scientists can trace the brain cells to reveal connections. Today, as it happens, every pillar of the brain uploading roadmap is a highly active area in neuroscience for an entirely unrelated reason. Understanding the structure and function of the brain could help doctors treat some of our most debilitating diseases. At Harvard University, neurobiologist Jeff Lichtman leads the effort to create a connectome, or comprehensive map of the brain structure, the network of trillions of axons, dendrites, and synapses that convey electrochemical signals. Lichtman is working to understand how experiences are physically encoded at the most basic level in the brain. To do so, he uses a device that incorporates innovations made by a brain uploading proponent, Kenneth Hayworth, who spent time as a postdoc in Lichtman's lab. It slices off razor-thin pieces of mouse brain and collects them sequentially on a reel of tape. The slice can then be scanned with an electron microscope and viewed on a computer like the frames of a movie. Wow. By following the thread-like extensions of individual nerve cells from frame to frame, Lichtman and his team have gained some interesting insights. We noticed, for instance, that when an axon bumped into a dendrite and made a synapse, if we followed it along, it made another synapse on the same dendrite, he says, even though there were 80 or 90 other dendrites in there. It seems to be making a choice, or who expected that? Nobody. It means this. Sorry everyone. It means this thing is not some random mess. I need a sip of coffee. When he started 5 years ago, Lichtman says the technique was so slow it would have taken several centuries to generate images for a cubic millimeter of brain, about 1,000th the size of a mouse brain, and a millionth the size of a human one. Now Lichman can do a cubic millimeter every couple of years. This summer, a new microscope will reduce the timeline to a couple of weeks. An army of such machines, he says, could put an entire human brain within reach. At the same time, scientists elsewhere are aggressively mapping neural function. Last April, President Obama unveiled the Brain Initiative for brain research through advancing innovative neurotechnologies. With an initial $100 million investment that many hope will grow to rival the $3.8 billion poured into decoding the human genome. Columbia University neuroscientist Raphael Yusti proposed a large-scale brain activity map that helped inspire the Brain Initiative and has spent 2 decades developing tools aimed at tracking how neurons excite and inhibit one another. Yusti likens the brain connectum to roads. Yusti likens the brain's connectum to roads and the firing of its neurons to traffic. Studying how neurons fire in circuits and how those circuits interact, he says, could help demystify disease such as schizophrenia or autism. It could also reveal far more, our very identity, Yusti suspects, lies in the traffic of brain activity. Our identity is no more than that. He says, there is no magic inside our skull. It's just neurons firing. So what he's trying to say is we don't have a soul or spirit. It's just a bunch of neurons firing around. Yeah, okay, buddy. To study those electrical impulses, scientists need to record the activity of individual neurons, but they're limited by the micro-machining techniques used to produce today's technology. In his lab at MIT, neuroengineer Ed Boyden is developing electrode arrays of 100 times denser than the ones currently in use. At the University of California, Berkeley, meanwhile, a team of scientists has proposed nanoscale particles called neural dust, which they plan to someday embed in the cortex as a wireless brain-machine interface. Whatever discoveries these researchers make may end up as a folder for another ambitious government initiative, the European Union's Human Brain Project, backed by 1.2 billion euros and 130 research institutions. It aims to create a supercomputer simulation that incorporates everything currently known about how the human brain works. There is no magic inside our skull, it's just neurons firing. Cohen is thrilled with all these developments, but he's most excited about a brain simulation technology already being tested in animals. In 2011, a team from the University of Southern California and Wake Forest University succeeded in creating the world's first artificial neural implant, a device capable of producing electrical activities that causes a rat to react as if the signal came from the animal's own brain. And that's the picture Bro Sanchez showed in his presentation. We've been able to uncover the neural code, the actual spatio-temporal firing patterns for particular objects in the hippocampus, says Theodore Berger, the UCS biomedical engineer who led the effort. It's a major breakthrough. Scientists believe long-term memory involves neurons in 2 areas of the hippocampus. that convert electrical signals to entirely new sequences, which are then transmitted to other parts of the brain. Berger's team recorded the incoming and outgoing signals in rats trained to perform a memory task, and then programmed a computer chip to emulate the latter on cue. When they destroy one of the layers of the rat's hippocampus, the animals couldn't perform the task. After being outfitted with the neural implant, they could. Berger and his team have since replicated the activity of other groups of neurons in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex of primates. The next step, he says, will be to repeat the experiment with more complex memories and behaviors. So that end, the researchers have begun to adapt the implant for testing in human epilepsy patients who have had surgery to remove areas of the hippocampus involved in seizures. Ted Berger's experiment shows in principle you can take an unknown circuit, analyze it, and make something that can replace what it does, just like a computer, Koene says. Well, he didn't say just like a computer, I'm saying that. The entire brain is nothing more than just many, many different individual circuits. Something like a motherboard. That afternoon, Koene and I drive to an office park in Petaluma, about 30 miles outside San Francisco. We head into a dimly lit stucco building decorated with posters that superimpose words like focus and imagination over photographs of alpine peaks and tropical sunsets. Guy Pailet, a snowy-haired former IBM engineer with a thick French accent and a cheerful Santa Claus-like disposition. Satan Claus. Soon joins us in the conference room. Pilot, I'm going to call him Pilot, and his partner had invented a new kind of energy-efficient computer chip based on the physical architecture of the brain, an achievement that had earned them inclusion in Koen's chart. Koene wanted an update on their progress. Paylett reports that he is negotiating to take over an economically troubled computer chip fabrication foundry in the south of France. Would Koene be willing to serve as a scientific advisor and possibly a fundraiser on a related project, he asked. Koene shifts impatiently in his chair. I just had an idea, he announces. You are thinking of getting into the foundry business. At the same time, people at the UC Berkeley are thinking of building new types of neural interfaces. When they get their prototype to work, would you consider? That's a very good idea, Palliot interrupts, before Koene can even finish asking whether he might fabricate their device too. Many scientists seem to puzzle over a question more fundamental to the brain uploader's goal. What's the point? As we pull out of the parking lot, Koene is ebullient. I had just witnessed his job at its best. This is what I do, he says. You have got tons of labs and researchers who are motivated by their own personal interest. The trick, he says, is to identify the goal that could benefit brain uploading and try to push them forward, whether the researchers have asked for the help or not. Certainly, it seems, many scientists have proven willing to consult and even collaborate with Koene. That was clear last spring, when scientists from institutions are varied as MIT, Harvard University, Duke University, and the University of Southern California descended on New York City's Lincoln Center to speak a 2-day Congress that Koene organized with the Russian module Itkov, called Global Future 2045. Oh my God. The conference's objective was to explore the requirements and implications of transferring mind into virtual bodies by the year 2045. Come on, people. And people call Bro Sanchez an agent. You gotta be kidding me, man. He is on point. Some of those present, however, later distanced themselves from the event's stated spiritual and sci-tech vision. We were trying to get people with a lot of funding who can do big things to start investing in important questions, says Jose Carmena, one of the Berkeley neuroscientists working on neural dust. That doesn't mean we have the same goal. We have similar goals along the way, like recording from as many neurons as possible. We all want to understand the brain. It just happens, that they need to understand the brain so they can upload it to a computer. Carmena's reticence was shared by other researchers, some of whom grew alarmed at even a faint possibility that their opinions about the technical plausibility of brain uploading, however qualified and cautious, might, however, be misinterpreted as an endorsement. There is a big difference between understanding and building a brain. Yusti says there are many things that we more or less understand but we cannot build. For example, the brain's hardware could provide critical, he explained. Or there could be intrinsic stochastic events like a quantum physics that could make it impossible to replicate. Harvard's Lichman was more comfortable speculating on the concept. I am not sure of any new laws of physics have to be invented as they go forward, he says. It's not completely impossible like the idea of putting a cow head on a dog. It's a science fiction idea. But making a brain of silicone does not seem crazy to me. In fact, he thinks the movement has helped advance neuroscience and hopes people like his former postdoc Hayworth succeed. Not so they can live forever, but to accelerate cures for brain dysfunction. Yeah. Hayworth, for his part, is now a senior scientist at Howard Hughes Medical Institution, Janelia Farm Research Campus, a leader in connectomics, where he is developing techniques to precisely image much larger sections of the brain than currently possible. He also founded the Brain Preservation Foundation, which has offered a prize for inventing a method that can preserve the brain until emulation technology catches up. I know this is a controversial topic, he says, and there aren't a heck of a lot of scientific institutes of any type that relish being dragged into it. Hopefully at some point that will change. In the meantime, many scientists seem to puzzle over a question more fundamental to the brain uploader's goal. What's the point? Existing indefinitely in the confines of computer code, Lichman points out, would be a pretty boring life. Earlier in the day, I had asked Todd Huffman, a member of Strout's early discussion group, whether the quest really boiled down to achieving immortality. Cohen and I dropped by Huffman's company, which received venture capital to develop automated brain slicing and imaging technologies. Huffman was wearing pink-toed nail polish on his shoeless feet and sported a thick beard and bleached foxhawk. That's a very egocentric and individualistic way of characterizing it, he responded. It's so that we can look at the thought structures of humans who are alive today, so that we can understand human history and what it is to be human. If we can capture and work with human creativity, drive, and awareness the same way we work with, the same way we work with, pieces of matter, he said, we can take what it is to be human, move it to another substrate, and go do things that we can't do as individual humans. We want as a species to continue our evolution. Evolution. Brain uploading, Cohen agreed. What was about evolving humanity, leaving behind the confines of a polluted planet and liberating humans to experience things that would be impossible in an organic body. Okay. What would it be like, for instance, to travel really close to the sun? He wondered. I got into this because I was interested in exploring not just the world, but eventually the universe. Okay. Our current substrates, our biological bodies, have been selected to live in a particular slot in space and time. But if we could get beyond that, we could tackle things we can't currently even contemplate. So, mind transfer through sci-fi history. 1929, The World, the Flesh, the Devil by J.D. Bernal. In the passage that captivates generations of futurists, Bernal predicts mankind will one day leave the body behind and achieve immortality, even replacing the organic brain cell by a synthetic apparatus. 1956, The City of the Stars by Arthur C. Clarke. 1 billion years from now, in the city of Diaspar, a central computer creates new bodies for a rotating group of citizens, storing their minds in its memory banks between lives. 1962, The Creation of the Humanoids. One way to know if your friends aren't droids with mind uploads is to stake out the robot temple around 4 a.m. That's when human personality shut off for an hour and humanoids make their daily pilgrimage back to headquarters. 1966. What Are Little Girls Made Of? Star Trek. A lovelorn Enterprise nurse beams down to the planet XO3 with Kirk to search for her fiancée, Alice, or Alas. He turns out to be a mad scientist who transferred himself to an android body after suffering frostbite. 1968, 2001, A Space Odyssey. In the film's final mission, pilot David Bowman hurtles through space and time until his transformation into a fetal being enclosed in an orbit of light. A reference to mind uploading explained in Arthur C. Clarke's novel on the same name. 1982, Tron. Not only does an underhanded and mediocre rival rip off video games designed by the protagonists, he then has the audacity to digitize him into the mainframe using an experimental laser. 1989, The Schizoid Man, Star Trek The Next Generation. I mean, it goes on, man. 92, Free Jack. These are all movies you can check out. That's Arnold Schwarzenegger. I remember that one, Free Jack. Mercenary Mick Jagger and henchmen travel back in time to try to snatch Emilio Estevez, a rich guy stored in the future. Spiritual switchboard wants to upload his mind into Estevez's body and steal his fiancée. 2000, The Sixth Day. In the future, an eye scan copies brain contents and transfer to a clone body. When Arnold Schwarzenegger returns home to discover his clone has moved in with his family, he recruits him to help blow up the cloning facility. 2004, Battlestar Galactica. 2009, Avatar. I love that movie. Paraplegic soldier uses a device to telepathically control a genetically grown body and spy on a race of 10-foot tall blue aliens. The aliens, and ultimately the soldier, upload their memories to the planet's neural network. And I think Avatar has a lot to do with us today. That's just my opinion. 2014, Transcendence. That was a crazy movie. How to store a brain and everything in it. While the first upload of a human brain remains decades, if not centuries away, proponents believe humanity may be far closer to reaching another key technological milestone, a preservation technique that could store a brain indefinitely without damaging its neurons or the trillions of microscopic connections between them. If we could put the brain into a state in which it does not decay, then the second step could be done 100 years later, says Kenneth Hayworth, a senior scientist at Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and everyone could experience mind uploading firsthand. To promote this goal, Hayworth co-founded the Brain Preservation Foundation on a nonprofit that is offering $106,000 technology prize to the first scientist or team to rise to that challenge. He says the first stage of the competition, the preservation of an entire mouse brain, may be won within the year, an achievement that would excite many mainstream neuroscientists who want to map the brain's circuitry to better understand memory and behavior. Current preservation methods, aside from cryonics, which has never successfully been demonstrated to preserve the brain's wiring, involve pumping chemicals through the body that can fix proteins and lipids in place. The brain is then removed and immersed in a series of solutions that dehydrate naturally occurring water and replace it with a plastic resin. The resin prevents chemical reactions that cause decay, preserving the brain's intrinsic architecture. But in order for all of the chemical to fully permeate brain tissue, scientists must first slice the organ onto sections 100 to 500 microns thick, a process that destroys information stored in connections made along those surfaces. Sean McCullough, a researcher at the Max Planck Institute for Medical Research in Heidelberg, Germany, developed a protocol that appears to safeguard all the brain's synapses. It preserves the extracellular, the extracellular space in the brain so that the chemicals can diffuse through the myriad layers of the whole grain. Then, if the brain is sliced and analyzed at a future date, all of its circuitry will remain visible. Hayworth is currently using electron microscopy to examine the mouse brains sent to him as a proof of principle. In order to win the technological prize, the protocol must also be published in a peer-reviewed journal. So far, Hayworth says Mikula's technique seems effective. If immortality is defined as brain preservation via plastination, Mikula says, then it's a reasonable extrapolation of his research results. But as for actual uploading into a computer, who can predict these things? Science is modern-day magic, Mikula says. And in the absence of a strong argument against the future feasible of mind uploading, anything is possible. That was very interesting, everybody. Very, very interesting.